Welcome to the podcast, Truck Hauling Talks. I'm John Jackson. The goal of this podcast is to bring you thoughtful discussions, interesting points of views, insights, and valuable information that you can apply to your trucking operation. The podcast is dedicated to exploring the most pressing transportation challenges from development and start to implementation. Truck Hauling Talks believes that transportation is an essential part of our daily lives and is passionate about finding ways to make it more sustainable, efficient, and profitable for drivers and small businesses. Thank you for listening to Truck Hauling Talks. Now here's this week's podcast. Welcome to Truck Hauling Talks with Wisdom and Authority Title Solutions. I'm John Jackson. I'm speaking with Chanel White. And she has nearly 20 years in the business of helping people with their titles, as well as questions dealing with registering vehicles and staying compliant with DOT regulations, as well as DMV authorizations or DMV regulated. How would you say it, Chanel?
DMV guidelines.
Guidelines. Thank you. That's a better word to use. DMV guidelines for those who are not commercial drivers. She can help you with anything that you need in that area, as well as all of the truck drivers out there or business owners in the transportation industry who use equipment. She's here for you. You can check out her page, Wisdom and Authority Title Solutions. She has a YouTube channel and she is always giving out nuggets, golden nuggets. I always say that. She gives out golden nuggets. She puts up new material every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So Chanel, thank you again for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we wanted to follow up the first 2 weeks of the podcast with compliance and what happens if you do not follow those guidelines, whether it be DOT or DMV guidelines. So Chanel, can you take it away?
Sure. So when it comes to DMV requirements for compliance and DOT, both entities actually ping pong off of each other. So let's start with DMV. If you're with DMV, you're registered. If you have not met your DOT compliance matters or things that fall under DOT, then you will find your registration or your records with DMV in trouble, basically. So let's say you have your apportion plate or IRP plate registered with your base state, but meanwhile you omitted to take care of your highway use tax, also your 2290, Schedule 1 as it's called, and you didn't take care of that in time. Now you have a stop on your record. So again, anything that you don't do as far as a requirement with DOT, it passes along to DMV and vice versa. Is
it just pretty much a fine that the person is facing, or what are the, I guess, levels that could happen to a individual or a company from not doing the things that they needed to do?
So it really depends, and this is where it gets really complicated. It gets really complicated because when it comes to DMV or DOT, let me say DOT at this point, there are different fines in place based on the compliance issue, right? Okay. So you have weight issues at the scales. Those can be several thousands of dollars. You have highway use tax, the Form 2290 that you may not have complied with. You have overweight restrictions, UCR filing, drug and alcohol consortium, of course, DOT authority itself. Let's say your insurance lapse. All of these are just a few examples in which you could have fines and or penalties, suspensions attached to them if you don't comply. And DMV gets whiff of these issues if you're out of compliance.
Okay. Now, what ways do they find out a person is out of compliance?
Well, the main thing you want to keep in mind when it comes to DOT compliance, everything has a deadline. And it's the same with DMV. there's always a deadline or a time frame in which you must comply with your filings. Okay, there's always a deadline. And let me just say this, from, on the DOT side, let's say you have your authority, but somehow you may have gotten audited, right? You may have ran into some issue with DOT. So now they want to review you. And if you don't comply with that, as an example, they give you a certain amount of time, they send a letter to you. If you don't comply, then guess what? You're out of service. So everything, whether it be DOT, whether it be DMV, they have timelines, specified dates that you must meet, requirements at hand. And if not, you're out of service, you're suspended, you're going to pay fines for all of the above. Okay.
Now, I do know of, I've heard of situations where companies have multiple MC numbers, and, if something is going on with one of those, they'll jump right back into doing freight business with another number. Is that allowed? Or is that something that a loophole DOT is looking to do something about?
That's really a good question, because when I was doing authorities, that's something that I would come across frequently. Whether it be me actually setting up the authorities for the carriers, or the carriers coming to me because they want to dodge what it is they're supposed to comply with. But technically, no, you're not supposed to have multiple MC numbers, let me say, unless you have specified authorities. Okay, there's different types of authorities: freight broker, contract carrier, things of that nature. So it really depends. I mean, you can have multiple authorities, but each authority has a certain criteria, a certain purpose.
Okay.
But yes, some drivers or carriers, they do that, and DOT is aware. Let me give you an example. You might have a company, XYZ Logistics, that did not comply or had issues with their authority. So now they're out of service, right? Okay, they think, oh, no big deal. Let me go and get another, EIN, and then also let me set up another DOT or MC authority here, thinking that DOT will not find out. You may not get caught right away, but eventually the well is going to run dry. You keep getting all these authorities out there, MC and DOT numbers, they will find out.
And what happens at that point? When they find
at that point, it's going to probably be a legal matter, because when you are applying for your authority, they do ask you, are you affiliated with this company? Have you had other numbers out there, entities out there that ties to you and your position with the company and things of that nature? So they do ask those questions. And in a sense, if you lie, basically you are perjuring yourself, because it is a legal matter. DOT is at the federal level, so that will be a serious problem.
Okay. And while we're on that subject, we have a lot of foreign entities that are doing freight brokering, and they may not be above board with what it is that they're doing. What is it that DOT or DMV is doing to help out drivers or small companies that are becoming victims of these companies that have multiple MC numbers, and they're doing a lot of, people call it like a double brokerage, where they're using more than one person for the same load, or they're not paying the person after they do the loads? What things are in place by DMV or DOT to kind of help out with this situation?
So DMV would not really do anything pertaining to that aspect. It's going to be more so at the DOT level, FMCSA. They're going to pretty much be doing that. But what are they doing? I mean, they may put up a bulletin here and there, but it may be kind of hard for them to really do anything if people do not report it. So it's going to take work of the carriers, the drivers, to really report these companies in order, and the more complaints you put out, the more, they'll do something about it. I think what I see a lot, even with owner-operators and drivers, a lot of times, I just feel that the truckers don't report a lot of things. That's why a lot of stuff pretty much goes unpunished, because a lot of truckers, they keep quiet. They just want to, do the load, get their pay, and go on to the next load. Mm-hmm. So if you're seeing things funny and you keep your mouth shut, it could affect you, even though you didn't have anything to do with it. It could affect your hauling as well.
Okay, so that may contribute to some of the freight wages or the miles, the pay per mile for the freight that a lot of the drivers are going through. The owner operators are facing tougher times because the freight just doesn't pay as much as it used to. Years ago, people used to charge according to weight of the freight also. You know, that's something we've gotten away from. Also, what's happening, a lot of wait time at the shippers or at the consignee. You know, that's a big issue with drivers.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thank you for that information on that side of not being in compliance as a company or an owner-operator, and also the tough times drivers are facing now dealing with brokers. Is there anything else on that particular subject that I may not have hit on that you can share with us?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Did you have something that you'd like to start discussing dealing with compliance that I may not have discussed? You know?
No, I just want to piggyback around to the time frame and the deadlines part that I just mentioned. It's very critical. It's very important. If you don't pay attention to those deadlines or you ignore the deadlines and time frames, keep in mind you are putting your authority and hauling status in jeopardy. Yeah, really. You put it in jeopardy when you don't comply. Now, I want to say this. If you are having a hard time complying, if you are afraid that you're not going to meet the deadline or the time frame in front of you, reach out. Try to reach out as soon as you can. Sometimes you will be granted an extension. You know, sometimes you may not. It just depends on how soon you reach out to them. It depends on the severity of the situation as well. Now, keep in mind, you still could pay penalties. But at least you have a little bit more leeway to gather any documents or information that the DMV or DOT could be seeking.
Thank you for that information. Well, on a subject similar to what we're talking about, dealing with the authority, let's say a company is at a point where they want to shut down. You know, they've been in business for whatever reason. Now they would like to just dissolve the business itself, the business entity. What steps are needed for them to shut down a company with their own authority?
Well, it really depends on the state, but so you got two things. You got the DMV side, which is going to be state related, and then you have DOT. So you can pretty much, if you have your authority, you can just file accordingly, whether it's by mail, fax, or email with DOT, dissolving or canceling your authority.
Okay.
So you can, go that route to do that. From the DOT side, the DMV side is going to be based on your state. Sometimes you will have to return the plates, your IFTA decals, things of that nature, or just a few things you will be required to turn in if you have IFTA decals and a portion or IRP plates as well. You will need to turn those back in.
And staying on that subject, if the company wants to suspend operation for a little while, but they want to maintain their authority, what's the steps that they need to take for that?
Well, that is going to be pretty much, if they want to maintain operations, that's going to be a case by case. If they're trying to keep the authority but want to suspend, it's going to really be a case where they will have to reach out to the DOT officer for guidance, because now essentially you don't have any vehicles. So the question is going to, if you're under common carrier or contract carrier, if you will, if you don't have any vehicles, then you really need to speak to your DOT officer about that.
Okay.
Unless you're going to be a freight broker and you have, that type of authority. So it really depends.
All right. Thank you for clearing that up and sharing your information on those two subjects. Okay. Well, those are the things, I guess, for right now, what we're working with. Drivers, we have to maintain and stay above board with DOT regulations, DMV, making sure we have our titles, registration, everything we need, because we don't have much of a leeway with what we're doing out here on the road. And we see it. You see it every day, everything changing. Regulations are getting tighter. Some of the regulations, I will say, are in place because of things we as truck drivers we've done in the past or we keep doing. So drivers, make sure you're doing what you can to follow the rules so we won't continue to have more and more stringent stipulations on us as truck drivers. Some of the biggest issues we're facing right now is dealing with off-duty time. You have some drivers on the side of the road because wherever they're going, they don't have enough parking, truck parking for them. I've seen where you're starting to get places that are offering overnight parking for a fee. We have that around the country where people are doing that. And there are also some situations where we have drivers that are trying to maintain being safe on the road. We're running into, hopefully, something that's going to change where we have violence, whether it be driver on driver or someone against the driver. So I'm just asking all the drivers out there, the truck drivers, to be safe. Wherever you go, make sure you're parking somewhere where somebody knows where you are, where you're checking in with your dispatchers, you're checking in with the consignee, checking in with your loved ones at home, checking in with somebody. Let somebody know where you are. Let them know your situation out here on the road, and to try to maintain a good working environment with each other, being courteous towards each other, not being angry on the road rage. We don't need it. In trucking, you don't need it. We have too many miles that you're going down the road for you to be that angry for that long. Be safe out here on the roads, driver. Take care of yourself. And Chanel, thank you again. We're with Truck Hauling Talks. I'm John Jackson, and this is Chanel White with Wisdom and Authority Title Solutions. Check out her channel on YouTube. She's giving out golden nuggets. Each week we're going to be bringing you a podcast dealing with compliance, dealing with truckers' issues, dealing with owner-operators' concerns, as well as small businesses in the transportation industry. Thank you again. We appreciate your views. This is John Jackson with Chanel White. Take care of yourselves out there, drivers, and we'll see you next week. Truck Hauling Talks can't make this podcast a success alone. You'll be joining a transportation community who share the same dedication to this important topic. Not only will you hear about the latest videos when you subscribe, but you'll also have the opportunity to engage with Truck Hauling Talks and other subscribers in the comments section. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and explore the world of transportation with us. Be safe, driver.